Now there's primarily two ways that we encrypt data sent over a network. We call them link encryption or session encryption, and we're going to take the time to go over both a little bit. Now session encryption means that the data that is sent during a particular communication session is encrypted only for the duration of that session. In other words, I have a link out to the internet, I'm attached to maybe a particular secure site, and for the duration of the session, the time that I'm connected to that particular site, then the data is secure. Now with session encryption, not necessarily all the data exchanged during that session is encrypted. For example, if I'm connected to, say, Amazon.com, the parts of that session that would be encrypted may include when I send my credit card number or my username and password. But when I'm browsing through the site and looking at books, that part of it's not encrypted. So session encryption does provide for encryption during a session, but it may not necessarily encrypt all the data during that session. And again, there are a couple of things that we definitely want to make sure that are encrypted during a session, and that would be things like my login and password when I'm accessing a secure site such as a secure email site, a webmail site such as yahoo.com or Gmail or Hotmail or whatever. During that particular part of the session, that information would be encrypted. Or when I'm about to check out from an online store such as Amazon.com, then that particular part of the session would be encrypted. Now session encryption over the web using secure websites is usually accomplished by a secure sockets layer, or SSL as we call it. And that's a very good technology that's pretty much widely in use all over the world. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as we go. Now session encryption can also serve to encrypt traffic between any two computers. It could be two computers in the same room or two computers on opposite sides of the world. We can have actual sessions that are encrypted based upon what kind of traffic is being sent back and forth, or what IP addresses are of the computers, or even the usernames of the individuals using the computers. For example, we could arrange it so that when I access the computer in the finance department, whenever I'm accessing the payroll file, for example, that particular access is encrypted so that no one eavesdrops on that session using a sniffer, for example, and gets that data. Any other data I exchange with that server may be unencrypted, but we can set the encryption, the session encryption for that, so that only that particular transaction, such as a file sharing transaction, is encrypted. A technology called IPsec, or IP security, can actually be used to encrypt specific types of network traffic and data between those two computers for that session. Now the other kind of network encryption that we can talk about is link encryption. Now link encryption basically means that the entire communications link or path between two computers, or usually two entire networks, is encrypted. The entire path is encrypted. So anything that gets transmitted and received between those two computers is encrypted, whether it's important or unimportant or private or confidential or public or what. It's just the entire cable, if you will, is encrypted, and anything sent back and forth is encrypted. Now, we can have that link encryption maintain the encryption for just one session, but that's usually not how it happens. Usually it encrypts for several sessions, or just regardless of the time or day or regardless of the traffic going across, that link is persistently encrypted by the link encryption devices or by the technologies used. Now normally for link encryption we will use hardware devices. And hardware encryption devices can provide for encryption at the physical layer, and they will encrypt all the bits, the ones and zeros that go across that wire, regardless of what kind of data they are. Now there are also some soft technologies that can provide that, such as IPsec we've already mentioned. IPsec can use link encryption between two computers within a network, or even over the internet. Now you only want to use link encryption if a dedicated or persistent encrypted channel is required. You don't want to use this every day, all day, because it's usually expensive or incurs some kind of performance overhead. It degrades your network traffic down a little bit. So it can be more expensive, and it can be more involved to maintain. Usually a system administrator has to set up IPsec or link encryption and make that work. So it's a little bit more in depth than you might want to do for just everyday use.